Everybody. I see some familiar faces. I met some of you. To those of you I haven't met, hello, greetings, welcome. I'm here to talk to you about the President's Bowl to start with. We had two teams last year, like Dr. Scott said, and we did very well, actually. Though some of the people that were on those teams have graduated, we did make it to the semifinals. This year, the semifinals will get prizes because Dr. Carter so generously has upped the prizes up to $3,000 in total, distributed amongst the finalists, the winner, and the semifinalists. We also have, I believe Dr. Scott can pull these up, some survey questions that go along with that on if someone would be interested in competing. I don't know if he's doing that right now or not, but
I'm doing it right now. We have a survey question on the President's Bowl, and I will launch it right there.
There we go.
If you might want to participate, please indicate accordingly. We'd love to have you and get fame and fortune and a resume stuffer as well as a LinkedIn stuffer.
It is a big thing. Also, the money is cash, and I know that in the past, certain organizations have used that money to go on trips if that at all sways your desire to participate. Also, just because we're competing as the Accounting and Finance Club, it doesn't mean that the President's Bowl isn't something we're looking for majors of all kinds. In my experience, having competed before, the best teams are the ones that have diverse groups and aren't just one people. For example, the winners of the first President's Bowl were chemistry, but part of the way they did so well was recruiting other people, like from the math department or from the history department.
I'll share the results. So over half of you are maybes, and less than half are no's. I'll share the results accordingly.
For those of you that are maybes, if you would include an email and a t-shirt size in the chat, we can actually reach out to you and coordinate that pretty soon.
Great idea. Yeah, please put that in chat right now as a t-shirt size. That's an added benefit besides cash, although cash is better, I think. T-shirts are cool. Thank you for your participation.
Awesome. So while they're doing that, I could also introduce, some of you may have heard, I know all of our School of Business majors have heard this, but there's something called the PD Idea Challenge. Aspiring entrepreneurs want to listen up here because if you have an idea or something that you really are really passionate about, you can enter in this as a competition amongst all of the PD region. There's a couple different schools, FMU, Coastal, Coker, a few others. They've extended the list, so I don't want to say there's a school when there isn't. But there's a lot of prize money and, importantly, big opportunities to meet people that can take your ideas and help you with them. So anyone that's interested in that, I believe we also have another poll.
Poll's coming up. And even if you don't have any idea, that's part of what a team will do. They'll come up with an idea, they'll pursue it, they'll think about it, and they'll extrapolate it and work together to figure it through. So we've got some yeses, some no's, some maybes. We'll go ahead, give it another 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I'll share the results. So we've got 27% on a yes, 47%, almost half on a no, another 27%. So a majority are maybes or yeses. If you could also just put ID and your email address in the chat, that will help us be able to follow up directly with you. Although I'll get a report out of here on who's the maybes. The truth comes out. Big data follows you wherever you go. So yes, Zoom will tell me who responded if you have your email address. But if it says iPhone, I'm not going to be able to track you down. So it's be nice to have your email address and ID in the chat. That would be very helpful. So thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your interest.
Absolutely. Fortunately or unfortunately, Zoom has not become Skynet yet.
Not yet. I'll say fortunately. Here we go.
So I believe that is all of the administrative stuff we have to get out of the way. We can go ahead and get into the talks. I believe is that correct, Dr. Scott?
Yep. Introductions and go. Cool. Well done.
Fantastic. I would like to introduce everyone to FM alum Zachary Wilson. He was a math major while he was here at FMU, but that doesn't mean that business doesn't affect everyone. In fact, he's here at a business school club. He's going to talk to you about data analytics, or if you're coming over from Leatherman, data science, as he will get into. There's a reason for the different terms. So I'd like to give him a warm welcome, and if everyone would just direct their attention to Zach Wilson.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. As you said, I'm Zach Wilson. I'm a manager of analytics at Compass Group, supporting our Touchpoint and Morrison Living sectors. So I am deep in the analytics space, both from data analytics, data science. We do a little bit of everything. And of course, and thank you again for Dr. Scott and Jacob for giving me the opportunity to come talk to you as well. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, I'll be happy to answer them. Of course, we'll cover that at the end, but I'll try to cover them as we go as well. So one thing they asked me to talk about is my career path at this point, because as I mentioned, I was a mathematics major at FMU, graduating about 9 years ago now. And through my time, through my summers, I actually did internships in manufacturing at Bosch Rexroth, which I was in the quality and warranty departments, which you can imagine these are fairly different from a mathematics major, but I had some opportunities to take that. And I found from my experience as being an intern and having interns that worked for me, that they're almost as valuable for things that you really want to do, as well as learning things that you really don't want to do for the rest of your life. That experience of, kind of, because at that time of year, it's a really low stakes. You're not starting your career. You're not dedicating yourself to it. It's really typically just a summer or a semester. It's a time to kind of explore some of these other fields. So I took that time. And what I found really through that was I had a knack for really automating things, improving workflows, improving streamlining processes. And so that kind of has really helped me kind of through the course of my career. And I kind of really started that and discovered that at that internship. After I graduated, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to graduate school. I didn't really have a good game plan for the rest of my life at the time. And so I'd been doing some web development. So I spent a year off really just doing freelance web development, writing the gig economy. And at the end of the year, I still really didn't have a clean idea of really if I wanted to pursue more of a technical or business oriented master's. And that's still today is a question for me. And so what I went out and did is I started interviewing, of course, and I found a role for a SAP data specialist in automotive manufacturing, specifically in our supply chain group. So it's basically an IT role for our enterprise resource planning software in a kind of functional department of a manufacturing plant. So it's a single plant making automotive parts. And so with that, what that happened with that is that I basically, through my propensity for automating things, my job became a lot less strenuous. So I had some time to work with other areas of my department, looking at, and being a supply chain, it's a really optimization focused department. So we looked at inventory, transportation, and my background in mathematics, particularly linear algebra for those who are existing math majors, was really practical and useful for that. And the thing that you find pretty quickly is when you're running with that much data, looking at daily inventory trends over a 2-year period, you're going to pretty much blow out most of your tools. Like typically we're using Excel and a little bit of Access, and those were just not, I found to be very frustrated pretty quickly when I was pushing those beyond really what they're designed to be. So I sent a single email out to kind of our enterprise team asking about, did we have SAP Lumira, which was kind of their business intelligence, business analytics tool that was with internal at SAP at the time. And they told me that no, but we're starting up a brand new enterprise data analytics team. And we've chosen Click as our analytics platform, and that here's a license and go have fun. And that was really a significant turning point in my career, because really at that time I was really tracking to be part of our core SAP IT team. But with that really put me down a completely separate track of more of a pure analytics support role. And which has really led me to the point now where now I support, I work currently at Compass Group as a manager of analytics. Like I said, supporting our Touchpoint and Morrison Living sector. So I basically food service and environmental services for healthcare and senior living. And so I support now, rather than just my single plant, I have about 425 hospitals and about 350 senior living communities that I manage the analytics for across all aspects of the business. So not just a single department like supply chain, but I do finance, operations, HR, all of our sales group. So we basically support the breadth of the entire organization with any of their dashboarding, reporting, and general analytics needs. So really, if you kind of tell, like, I've had a kind of a somewhat indirect path to get to where I am today. And kind of my big lessons learned is finding, I think the right manager is better than the right company, especially when you're starting out. I had a lot of support from my early managers and directors that let me try my strengths and gave me the opportunities to create a lot of value for our organizations that I wouldn't have if I didn't have a manager that was willing to kind of let me grow. And then on the same lines is ask questions. Really, my career was trending towards analytics, but it really was pivoted around a single opportunity and a single email. Without asking questions, I wouldn't have gotten to really where I am today. And then kind of finally, use all of these learning experiences. I don't think my time before was useless. It really set me up to where I am today. So any internships are really, again, great experiences where you can really figure out what you enjoy doing, because it's there's a lot of theory that you come in your courses, but you really find the nitty gritty of the day-to-day work. Do you enjoy it? And I think that's a really important experience that it was really practical for me. And I've seen it really be helpful for, again, like the interns that have worked underneath me. So I know always an important topic is, what do I use day to day? What is my toolkit? So my primary tool is Click. We use both the Click Sense and View products as a BI platform. You're going to find it similar to your Power BI or Tableaus. I have a strong preference for Click, but I won't turn this into a sales conversation. And so that's where we do a lot of our dashboarding, a lot of our data wrangling and cleaning, and just general analysis, both where we're pushing out to across the business as well as using just internally for our group. I use R for any other heavy lifting. So if I need to do true machine learning models, especially one-offs and any kind of really niche work, R is where I go to. I mean, there's things like we did convex holes on a set of points for those who enjoy graph theory. That's kind of a point at R where your general analytics platform is just not going to be sufficient. For Python, we use it for a lot of our more automated tasks. So if we productionalize a machine learning model, we tend to use Python for it. It just works better for that ongoing analysis, as well as all of our web scraping and API engines and automation. So pieces where we're bringing in some automated data streams, Python is absolutely the language of choice. It's definitely more of that production side. And of course, Excel, right? Excel is a tool of business. For better or for worse, it's extremely flexible, and also is a real double-edged sword. I mean, a lot of users feel comfortable with it. And so part of our analytics side is, we have to also give users what environments they expect to be in. So providing the right tools for them and the right platforms it has to be part of our suite of tools. In our secondary, we also do have Power BI, Tableau, and Access applications that we do maintain. I use them probably quarterly, maybe monthly. So we do kind of maintain that skill set, but there's more of existing things that we have to maintain from our group. From historically, you'll find in an organization people have built various things in various tools, and you usually get stuck maintaining it for the rest of your life. And so that's kind of my bit. I think I can ramble on for a bit longer, but I want to recover, what is analytics today? What are those key things that are happening? Okay. So what are those things that are happening across in the environments today that we're seeing across the business? So there are really 4 key stages that I see for the analytics journey. I know Dr. Hard will be also speaking on these. So I'll go quickly through them for at least a brief teaser. That the descriptive is really historical data. So this is really the foundation of mostly what we see in the business, right? This is, did my revenues change month over month? What has happened in the past? And as we move to diagnostic, we really build on top of that historical data and add in the necessary context to see what happened and what did we do the right thing, and try and diagnose issues. So this is when you add things like budgets, baselines, and targets and say, all right, so we increased revenue, but is it because we were actually more profitable, or is it because we just added more units and revenues naturally went up? So this is where we add that kind of more of that knowledge rather than just having raw data. And a lot of organizations will stop there. They'll stop pretty much at the historical data because really that's been the base, that's really where the large part of the ROI is. And then that's really been the core part of BI since the 90s. And it's a lot of extra work in terms of data quality and organizational structure to really move to the next step, which we call predictive, which is the realm of machine learning, and where you're starting to really get into true data science. And that's where we hit predictive, which is taking the historical data, building a model for it, and using kind of your current scenario and forecast to basically predict the future outcomes. So it could be future sales. Are we going to do better or worse? So that can be basically what's going to happen. And then we finally land on prescriptive, which is where we add, again, that extra level of context to help us make actual actionable business decisions. So yeah, things are going to change and this is what's going to happen, but what is the organization going to do about it? Are we going to kind of enhance those positive outcomes? Or are we going to try and change course to help kind of relieve ourselves from negative outcomes? And so that's where we kind of truly prescribe think in terms of like medicine, we're prescribing a solution. So you need that kind of business knowledge on top of that predictive. So these all stack up, and you'll find that businesses will be anywhere along the spectrum and maybe doing a little bit of one, but not the other. But there is, like I said, a significant divide between diagnostic and predictive that you'll see out there in the wild. And another key component of this is going to be data literacy. This has been becoming a rapidly rising topic in data analytics, especially for the last probably 2 to 3 years. And of course, you can read the definition. It's ability to read, work with, and analyze and argue with data. And this is really important because you can't do advanced analytics, you can't do predictive and prescriptive unless your organization is ready to handle that kind of information. If they don't really trust or understand the data, that they're not going to make decisions really properly based on that information. And when the data literacy project surveyed out, only 24% of business makers, 32% of C-level execs, and only 21% of 16 to 24-year-olds were data literate. So, I mean, this is what the organizations are out there struggling with. Now, it does vary from industry to industry, and this was across a wide span of industries. But, I mean, this is why you see that businesses are really stopping after that historical descriptive and diagnostic data and not really moving forward because they're not set up and not prepared to handle advanced analytics. So that's always one thing when you're looking out there at companies. These are kind of the questions you want to ask. What type of analytics are you doing? I mean, a lot of people say they're doing various things, but really driving into those questions. I always find an interview is a two-way street. You're both interviewing the company and they're interviewing you. And so asking these pointy questions to make sure you know what you're kind of getting into. And the other side of that, kind of continuing on the soft side, is data storytelling. Doing an analysis is really not enough. It's about how you communicate it, because you can do the most beautiful, perfect, impactful analysis, but if you can't communicate it within your organization, and if they're not ready for it, then it's not going to be practical or useful, and you're not going to have good business outcomes from that. Because really in analytics, I personally work with everyone because I work in food service, I work with chefs all the way to our CEO and everywhere in between. So we have to understand also how to communicate with different levels within your organization, because, I'm not going to give a chef a kernel density plot and expect them to really understand it. So, make sure that you're doing the analysis, but you're also communicating it in a way that is meaningful. And you want to build it to a narrative. It's called data storytelling for a reason. It should have a beginning, middle, and end. Typically for us, it's talking about the process, the analysis, the results, and then what are the actionable business outcomes that we want to pursue. But, it should have kind of that narrative, because it's really how you make it impactful for the people that you're communicating and sharing your analysis with. And then finally, context is king. Context has always been king, but especially here and now, because so much of analytics is high detail, very tactical. But we impact significantly strategic initiatives. So making sure that you're giving, you're building this story, but you're also giving the context of why is it important? How does it affect the larger picture? And again, that we'll talk about a little bit more about that, but that balance between strategic and tactical is one of those critical needs in the business. Embedded analytics. So this is where we take our brand new dashboards that we built and we throw them in the trash. Because the problem is that we find out in the world is that business intelligence adoption stagnates at 15 to 25%, which is, for me, is always shockingly low, but I see it absolutely in the field. Because the problem is that people have their normal workflows and they have their normal applications that they do their day-to-day work in, but they have to go to a whole different environment to actually see the analysis side of the business. So that's really disruptive for a lot of people, that they're having to balance between these various different tools just to get their day-to-day work done. And they'll always do what they have to do. And the analytics is just a side piece that they'll just drop off with. So the idea of embedded analytics is, how do we strip apart these components of these dashboards and these analytics environments and actually insert them into the applications that people are using in their day-to-day lives. So this is one of those things that it's been popular, but is really continuing to see a lot of growth from my point of view in the analytics industry, just because we have to try and get people more involved in making data-driven decision making, because it's just such an important part of, especially like currently in COVID, where we can't talk to clients, we can't build relationships in the same way. The one thing we do have is the data information that we've been storing and analyzing over the last several years. And the last thing, I have a somewhat controversial statement to make, is that capital, bold, big data is just lowercase d data. So there was a time when big data you had to have a Hadoop environment. You were analyzing it pretty much exclusively with Spark. But that's just no longer the case. Our analytics tools and platforms have caught up. And so we are using the same tools to analyze big data as any other data. And so for me, if I'm using the same exact environment, if I'm doing the same type of analysis, same tools, it's the same thing. Especially with things like Snowflake that are starting to become much more industry involved, has been a pretty much a game changer in a lot of industries for analyzing data, especially in the data science platforms and managing huge amounts of data, where it's more become less about how much you have, but how long does it take to process. If you look at the cost mechanisms, it used to be really about how much data you had, then it was how many times you were pulling it, and now it's all about what's your processing requirements. So yes, that's my controversial statement for the night. Big data is just data. And so that wraps up my key points. And I want to talk a little bit about what's it like to be a good analyst. At least I will give no supporting data. This is pure conjecture, but I think it's pretty accurate from what I've seen across several companies and across kind of my experience so far, is that you have to have a deep love of problem solving. I spend all my days basically managing, here's a puzzle, here's all my data, how do I get to a solution for either analysis or a tool or some type of work for my end users? There's a lot of edge cases and there's a lot of piecing everything together. And so that's just a core component. And number two, I would say strong interpersonal skills. We so many times in data analytics, we think of the really technical skills, how we're executing analyses, what methods we're using, but really the communication of that is equally, if not more important than what we're actually doing. I would always rather have kind of a mediocre analysis with a great communication to the team, because really that's how we're actually impacting our business processes. It's how we're getting good business outcomes. And then kind of, as we talked about a little bit before, the ability to both be strategic and technical. I work up and down the business. I work with chefs on their food cost calculators that are really tactical, but that really rolls up and drives our strategic outcomes, because we roll really the width and the entire height of an organization. You have to have that ability to keep in mind your strategic initiatives and how do your tactical implementations actually affect that, and making sure that you're building those to basically end up with the right outcomes. You really would need to expand your knowledge both wide and deep. Across the business, I have to be basically an expert in finance and HR and retention, and how to build surveys, how food cost and inventory is managed. I have to keep in mind all of those. So learning it's a great way. Analytics is a way to understand how all parts of the business interoperate into each other. And it requires that. And again, you have to be deep. You have to be basically a subject matter expert in them all. And it's the same is true for the knowledge base too. We do a lot of different types of analytics. We have to know what's appropriate for what we're doing, and then be deep enough that we can execute it. And then finally, the most technical one is conceptually how data work, relates, and transforms. So what makes a great analyst from just a kind of mediocre one is that we never have data ready for analysis. It's never clean. It's never shaped right. I found, I can't say never, but probably once it's probably been perfect, but rarely do you find data in the wild that's ready to go. So knowing how exactly what you need to do from raw data to analysis ready before we even start coding is a fundamental skill to have. It's built through experience largely, but is one of those that really is what can make you excel as an analyst. Finally, job posting. So if you're looking to get into this field, and hopefully I haven't steered you away from it, there's kind of a level of technicality that you'll generally see. And I started in a functional group in supply chain as a specialist, and you can work your way up to kind of more that business kind of functional analyst. And then the kind of top, of course, the most technical is going to be the kind of that data scientist, data engineer, data architect. Now, I will say in the wild, job titles are a little bit messy. Analytics is a growing field and people kind of just throw whatever title they think. I would always recommend reading the job descriptions carefully because they are a bit hit or miss. And if you really want to look into more, some things I recommend from journals, Harvard Data Science Review, free and is an excellent resource for both highly technical articles as well as just general education and information. From podcasts, I love Not So Standard Deviations and Linear Digressions, even though they don't have any more, no new episodes for Linear Digressions. It's a great way to keep on top of what other professionals are doing in the fields. If you want to see how analysis is done practically, Tidy Tuesday on YouTube does, John basically takes a blind data set and spends an hour. You want to be intermediate in R before to really kind of grasp it, but he'll take a blind data set, do an analysis on the spot, and kind of walk you through how to build visualizations, how to explore data in R in kind of a very analytical way. Scott Taylor, Jordan Mara, Kate Strachny are great social media presences. And one great thing for you guys with COVID, almost all the conferences are free and online, where you normally have $1,000 entry fee and have to fly across the country. ClickWorld, RStudio Global just happened, but I know they're releasing their all their presentations, Demopalooza, Dedicated, and then always look for meetups and user groups in your area. They're somewhat geographically focused. In Atlanta, I'm kind of lucky. There's a lot around me, but definitely look into, there's a lot of these out there like meetup.com is a great place where they have basically user generated content where you can kind of see network, kind of similar to this, like network with other professionals and kind of see what's happening in the space. And that's a wrap from me. I said, I'm Zach Wilson. Feel free to email me, add me on LinkedIn. I put it in the chat. And if you have any questions, please, about my experience, about analytics, anything you want to know, I'm yours.
Yes, now is a great time to ask questions. We have a couple minutes before Dr. Hari will speak. Anybody have any?
Yeah.
Ready? Go ahead.
So Zach, I was wondering, in terms of learning R, at what point did you decide to go into that? Was that part of your degree program, or was it after you got your degree that you decided to do some research into that?
So so if you look at the timing, R wasn't really becoming mainstream till after I graduated. So that was kind of after learning, though. I mean, so I was a math major with a computer science background. So I was already using Python, C++, and Java. So I was already in a programming environment. And R was just a really great extension for it. I had done some initial work in it. And actually the kind of funny story was my wife started her MPH in epidemiology and had to use R for all of her analysis. So working on doing Twitter data scraping and analysis was actually really kind of where I dove deep into R and really kind of fell in love with it. I think it's a great tool for doing kind of really focused analysis. Like I said, it's not really a production tool for us, but it's a really great for if you need to do really this high detailed analysis. I mean, really doing a lot of data management tools, especially if you're using like the Tidyverse packages, is a dream. I started R before Tidyverse was popular, and it was miserable. So everyone now is extremely lucky to have that as a capability.
Any other questions? The floor is open.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
So you'd mentioned that there was some trouble adopting data into the world. People almost seemed stuck in their ways, but COVID was almost forcing people to adapt. I am going to assume the world will return to some normalcy at some point. Do you think that COVID has changed the way people are going to approach these problems, or in some ways, do you think when people have the chance to revert back, they might almost digress back to that point?
It's hard to digress in business fully back to old ways. I mean, to a degree, there might be some backsliding, of course, but we've demonstrated a lot more value for people. I think the value proposition is now a lot more evident. So I think it's going to be industry specific. So for our teams, probably not. Also because we're doing a lot of work to make sure we don't backslide. But I think it's hard to completely go back to a prior state. So I think we'll probably see more of a hybrid approach where there'll be some, I mean, naturally there'll be some, so like there's traditional relationships we built and there's traditional decisions we made. But I think that as long as the organizations are setting themselves up for success with that, then you'll see it continue forward.
Any other questions before we move on to our next speaker?
Actually, I have a question and a comment, if I may.
Yep.
By the way, Zach, really great presentation. Appreciated the insights. I liked a lot of the things that you said regarding internships and the value of finding what you like and what you don't like. And then you also talked about the idea of mentorship and finding a good manager that will support you and you can support them, and having that dialogue. The question I have is, and we talked a little bit about this before you came on board, in my day, as an accountant, as a CPA, I did audit. And audit was a great broad base of exposure. Running around in a company, you get exposed to the finance side, the operational side, the production side, the legal side, the management and executive level, and strategic side. And I'm hearing you say that data analytics offers that same opportunity to really go across the board in the multiple areas in the business. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course. So especially in a more enterprise role, I really cover, I work technically under finance, but we also, like right now, for example, I'm working on a data retention strategy with HR. But I'm also working on safety with our operations team. So how do we reduce safety claims? We work truly, I mean, because every component of the business uses data, period. They're generating it. Now, whether they're using it appropriately or not, that's another story. But we become the central hub of all the data for the entire organization. So when people want dashboards built, we're the ones who build them. When they want, they'll do a lot of their own analysis, but really they come to us as either a supporting role in it or to validate their claims, or so we become kind of that central source of truth within the entire organization. And so that's really where you see business top to bottom, from all the way from left to right. You see basically how it all kind of works together. And from the data, you see how the metrics combine. So how does one affect the other? So when we look at, how do we affect, like, how does pay affect turnover and things like that? So, and how do we, if we change our operational model, how does it affect turnover, right? So especially retention is on my mind right now. We look at how we make changes throughout other parts of the organization and affects completely the other side of the spectrum. So I think it's a great way to see kind of what an organization, how it operates as a whole, and then kind of become a sort of specialist in a little bit in every aspect. That's kind of a jack of all trades. And from there, you can also revert. So let's say if you want to go from analytics and then jump into to a finance group, or jump into a human resources or marketing, you can really deep dive and become an asset, because you become basically a hybrid data analyst / specialist for that role. So it can also be a great jumping off point if you want to go into a more selective domain.
Would you have done anything differently looking back 8, 9 years ago in the program? I mean, the major, no knowledge is bad knowledge, but
I mean, I would have taken a few more accounting classes. It was an on-the-job training push into learn finance, because I didn't come from any traditional finance background, so I had to learn a lot of finance very quickly. So some of those domains I wish I would have had a little more formal instruction on, but no, I think it was good because it let me build up. So working kind of in a more functional area allowed me to see working supply chain, kind of let me start small and kind of build my way up. Because it allowed me to really get close to users, because the people that I was building tools for, I sat next to. So I was able to see what really drove them. So when we look at how to look at from a user interface and user experience, I got really hands-on with that. What really makes people tick? What kind of problems do they have? And then when I'm working in more of a kind of more abstracted from the people. I work with people across the country. And I get late conference calls with my team in California. So I don't get to sit kind of as hands-on with them. So being able to kind of work in that small environment to really kind of build that experience of what really helps people. Because really, when it comes down to it, analytics is a really support department. We support the entire organization. And coming at it from that perspective, I think coming from a tighter functional group to that kind of enterprise level, I think was really beneficial for me. So I like that approach because I took it, obviously, but I think there's a lot of value in that rather than coming straight into that enterprise level.
thank you very much. And the important question is, do you play the guitars or the keyboard or both?
Both. I was at my time at FMU, I was in a band with a couple other physics majors. So cool. I still have all the equipment. I don't play nearly as much, but I still have everything from those days.
Got it. Excellent.
Alrighty. I second that. That was some outstanding insight from one of our very own alum, and we thank you for coming and thank you for your time. And just a reminder, we did meet and find him on LinkedIn, so that is a powerful tool. Next, I am pleased to present our very own Dean of the School of Business, Dr. Hari. He has a PhD in Information Technology and Operations and will help us further explore the field of data analytics. Please feel free to type any questions in the chat anytime or wait for our Q&A. Dean Hari, the floor is yours.
Thank you, James. Let me go ahead and, I think I can share the screen. Let me go ahead and get my presentation up. So, you won't hear me, Zach, I mean, what Zach was saying, I think I agree with a lot of things he said, and there's not much we disagree on. Business analytics is a tool. It's a tool we use to analyze data, and you can apply it across any discipline, any function. And it doesn't have to be a business. It could be in biology. It could be in physics. In any discipline, you're going to use data, and you're going to use data analytics to analyze it. So let's talk a little bit about analytics and news. So, when I was doing my PhD in 2001 to 5, we were working on a lot of the tools and techniques which are now commonplace. We were doing machine learning, we were using neural networks. This was all at the PhD program. And we really didn't hear much of analytics at the time. At the time, the whole concept and talk was on data mining, knowledge discovery in databases, data warehousing. That was the talk. And really, when I saw analytics, really kind of the word analytics blow up in news in just normal parlance, was about 2012. And we had this father walk into Target. He was really mad because his 17-year-old daughter was sent coupons for maternity clothes and cribs, and he was yelling at the Target manager and says, what the hell are you guys thinking? Are you trying to encourage my daughter? She's just 17-years old, and what are you trying to sell? And the manager apologized, gave him some discounts, sent him back home. And 2-3 days later, the manager calls the father again to just check everything is okay because he doesn't want a lawsuit. And the father calls and he says, I apologize, my daughter is pregnant. So Target knew that the daughter was pregnant much before the father did, right? And the reason was that the daughter bought prenatal vitamins and scent-free soap. If you buy that, Target knows that there's a high probability you're going to be pregnant. Your shopping habits change when you're pregnant, and analytics will actually, your analytics guy will tell you that. So that's when analytics got really big. Here's another example. Google was able to predict flu outbreaks faster than CDC because people were using flu-related keyword phrases. They knew IP addresses of people doing the search. They had this whole flu tracker, and then they shut it down in 2015 because there were serious concerns about privacy. Remember, if you're in the medical field, there are a whole bunch of regulations to ensure privacy of the patient, and so Google shut that whole tool down. Again, this was analytics, right? So these were kind of things which kind of started popping up, and the word analytics was really coming through mainstream. Now it was not just in academia or in really big companies, but people are talking about analytics more and more. This is the last 10 years. But the tools and techniques have been around for pretty much a long time. The difference in a lot of ways is that we are dealing with a huge volume of data, right? Than in the past when you used to deal with small samples of data. So let's talk a little bit about what analytics is, and I'll actually be repeating a lot of what Zach said. So what is analytics? So you are looking for meaningful patterns in data, and it's interpretation, and I think the important part which you talked about was communication, right? I have a lot of times students say, I'm a math person, I don't want to talk to people. Well, you can't get away from that. You've got to be able to communicate what you're figuring out here. You are also going to look at applying data patterns and make effective decisions. And so this is kind of how you connect data and effective decision making. And so the tools we are going to use, some of it you have learned, that you will use a lot of statistics, right? Last year, I had a student come up to me and say, I'm never going to use regression. Why are you teaching this, right? And I now I know who to send him to. If I get that question, I'll send him to you, Zach, right? There is good bit of computer programming, and then there are tools in math called operations research. In math, it's called applied mathematics. And when we used to call it in business, we used to call it management science or decision sciences. Engineering uses it, business uses it. These are all tools which Zach talked about. A lot of it is linear math, linear algebra, and we call it linear programming. But we use a lot of it here. So end of the day, what you're going to do, what is the job? You're going to store data. You need something to store data. You're going to fetch data. There's processing, and then you're going to report it, right? And the processing and analysis part is where the analyst comes in. Fetching data, if you take a database class, if you do a basic SQL, that's the beginning of looking at how you fetch data. There are other methods, but a basic language is SQL. This is where you want to start. And then reporting tools, you have Python, some kind of programming language, could be Tableau, which is more a graphical user interface, and I'll talk a little bit about all that, okay? So what are the types of analytics? We talked about descriptive, predictive, prescriptive. Zach already talked about that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about risk analytics, which is which kind of crosses through the whole thing, right? So descriptive analytics is all about the past. You have the data. Whenever you go to Walmart and they are running through a barcode reader, I mean, that's basically a transaction processing system. They're basically recording your transactions, and they kind of integrate that, and then you get reports which you can describe. You can use your averages, your kind of your spread of your data. You'll talk about these different things, and you learn that in your basic business stats class. How do you describe your data? You can also visualize data. Zach talked about digital dashboards. All of that comes under descriptive analytics, and a lot of companies are already here. They're using a good chunk of this in doing descriptive analytics. And as we talked about here, it's pretty much what we call as hindsight. And then we start going, the level of difficulty increases and the value of it increases. Next is predictive analytics. What will happen in the future? You're trying to predict what's going to happen. You're trying to forecast your demand. You're going to forecast your stock market. It depends on where you're applying it. When I did my engineering, we did something called signal processing and optimum control theory, right? And then when I did my finance, my MBA in finance, we used the same techniques to the signal processing. Was basically we are separating signal from noise in electronics, right? Electronics sources, kind of where are we getting signal, where are we getting noise. It can be useful in sound systems too, in musical halls, right? You want to separate signal from noise. And the same mathematics, we ended up using that for stock market prediction, where we're trying to separate signal from noise. So a lot of the stuff is used across disciplines. And that's where the predictive analytics comes. And one of the things which I want to emphasize with predictive analytics, so you'll be kinder to weather forecasters, is there's always going to be an error, right? You're never going to make 100% accurate prediction, right? And a lot of times you can be very accurate, but I can be very broadly accurate, right? I can say your life expectancy, or all of you, your GPA is going to be between 0 and 4, right? That's a very accurate, I'm 100% accurate. It's kind of useless to you guys, right? If I was doing life insurance, I could say your life expectancy is anywhere from 0 to 150 years. Not going to be helpful, right? But the more precise I get, which is what is helpful, the less accurate you become. So precision, you got to kind of always understand between precision and accuracy. And a lot of times I find that people confuse between the two. And the last part is prescriptive analytics. Once you get all this, how are you going to use data to make good decisions? And you got to be careful, because we are looking at optimization. A lot of times when we want to find what the best decision is, we are focusing on one aspect of it. Could be maximizing profit, could be minimizing cost, could be minimizing time, but it has cascading impacts throughout the organization, and you've got to be careful about how you're going to make managerial decisions using these analytics. And the last part, which kind of goes through all of this, is what I call as risk analytics, is when you incorporate uncertainty. You don't really know cost is $5, but you have an estimate. You think on average it's $5, but it could be, best case scenario, it's going to be $2. Worst case scenario, it's going to be $8. Now, what are you going to have? How are you going to handle that? So that simulation comes into this. You can run a lot of simulations to look at the probability of getting a value, and that's where risk analytics comes into play. Okay. So talking very quickly about them, as I said, descriptive analytics. There's a lot of it is already, that data is already there. There's a good chunk of data visualization which goes on using digital dashboards, and you can use these kind of softwares, Tableau, Power BI, all kind of do a lot of data visualization. It allows you to get the data in a form that makes it easy for people to interpret and understand. And for those of you who are saying, well, how do we Tableau's in the School of Business Computer Labs? You guys can start, if you want to, start messing around with that. I know Dr. Scott uses that in his classes. Dr. Iglesias is kind of putting that in their class, in the HR class. So it's being slowly filtered through. What I would suggest in your undergrad is to not worry about that. There are 1,500 tools and different companies use different tools, right? I would pick something and start kind of understanding the concepts behind it. And then you can always learn the other tools, as Zach has done. Once you have a nice, strong basics set up, you can move on and learn the other tools pretty easily. Predictive analytics is the future. You will use a lot of statistics. Regression is one of the tools you're going to use a lot. Forecasting, we talk about things like time series forecasting. We talk about, there's a whole bunch of methods which you can use to predict the future. And there is data mining, which is also a set of tools where you can try and look at classifying data. These are all things you can do with predictive analytics, and some of the tools you can use for that is SPSS. Again, we have SPSS. Those of you who are taking marketing research will be using SPSS. SAS is another software. R, those of you who are economics majors, you'll be working with Stata. So don't kind of get hung up on the tools. Make sure you have the ability to learn these on your own later on. So pick a tool, learn it well, because a lot of things will be very similar. There will be variations and changes, but once you know how to do a regression in SPSS, you can go online and figure out how to do regression in R, so long as you understand what regression is. So that's the, from my perspective, I look at it as the difference between education and skill-based training, right? And since I have a computer science background, I go, well, I learned basic Fortran Pascal, right? And then that's in the 80s, early 80s. I was learned basic Fortran Pascal, COBOL. I did a lot of COBOL programming, right? And then when C++ and Java came in the 90s, I could pick it up on my own. I did have trouble shifting from C to C++ because that was not a shift in language, it was a shift in concept from procedural to object-oriented. Now that's education, not skill-based training, right? So if you have a strong foundation, you'll be able to shift. I mean, I have no problems to say, anybody like Zach, if there's a new language comes in, Zach will be able to pick it up if that becomes the hot language, right? So my suggestion for all of you is to kind of figure out what the underlying concepts are and get a strong grounding on them. And finally, here you go, prescriptive analytics. We're looking at, these are called decision support systems, where you are using some high-level mathematics. You are going to look at linear programming, nonlinear optimization. And by the way, Excel will do this for you to a limited level, but you can do linear programming with Excel. And some of the business classes do teach that. And the part where you need a bit of programming, where you need to know some amount of programming, is where you talk about artificial neural networks, machine learning, you talk about heuristics, genetic algorithms. These all will require you to do some amount of programming for you to do that optimization. So long as you're here, you can kind of get away without programming if you know a little bit of math, or you're willing to take a linear math class, or just have the ability to convert English to math, and Excel will actually run some decent sized problems for you. So here are some examples of software we can do linear programming. Lindo, Cplex, these are all powerful linear programming optimization softwares. There's Groby, which is actually now, there's a company which actually embeds pretty high level linear programming software into Excel, and you can use that to solve those problems. So it's a good start. Excel is a good basis to start your learning, but it can't be just I know how to do Excel. You got to really know how to do Excel well, and we'll talk about that later. And the final part is risk analytics, the decision making under uncertainty. And so here you're facing situations where you have only estimates of what you need. And I know the typical example I use when I teach it, I talk about project management, right? When you're dealing with project management and you want to optimize, or you want to do a whole thing on project management, and you kind of use your best case, worst case, and most likely, you break up your task, your project into multiple tasks, and then you can actually run a simulation to see what's the probability you're going to get your project done in this time based on this distribution, right? So how do you make decisions under uncertainty? You're going to use a lot of simulation here and probability, and you got to understand the underlying concept of probability and simulation here. So if you are in the business school and you're saying, well, we don't have an analytics program, we don't have a business analytics or data analytics major, we don't have that. So what should I do? I'm really interested in this. How do I start? So the first thing you've got to, your Math 134 is in your sophomore year or your early freshman year, you're taking a Math 134. This is your basis foundation class, your probability and stats class, right? And then after you finish that, you've got to do your applied business stats class. So these two classes really will teach you the theory behind a lot of the stuff, your predictive analytics, your descriptive analytics will all come from this. This is the foundation, and it's all, there's no software here. This is paper and pen, and for you to really understand what you're doing, right? The software is how to do it, but first you need to know what you're doing, right? And then we have some classes. Business analytics is a purely Excel driven class, but you'll learn statistics, you'll learn linear programming there, you'll learn simulation there. So this is a class which is offered every spring. Supply chain management is a class, as Zach said, they use a lot of optimization. You will actually do a project. This is the capstone supply chain management class, and you will actually do a project with Sunoco analyzing their 5 years of sales data for a particular division, a particular plant. I think last year they looked at Pillsbury dough, right? And Sunoco makes those cans under which Pillsbury dough is stored. So we had 5 years of data, and we said, well, how will COVID impact? How does COVID impact their sales? And so we started looking for patterns in sales. They worked with the company executives as part of the class, and then they built the forecast for 2020, which came out really wrong because 5 years, they looked at 2014 to 2019, and 2020 was nothing like 2014 to 2019, and they are using the past data to predict the future. Of course, it was going to come wrong, but I wanted them to get, as Zach talked about, context. Context was really important. They needed to understand sometimes you're going to get an error, and their forecasting error came out to be 60%, and they were freaking out. But it was a good experience, right? Then they had to use that forecast to do an optimization to say how many people should we hire, what inventory should we have back orders, and what's the minimum cost, right? And how much safety stock should we have? And found out that they needed since the whole forecast was wrong, their solution, their recommendation was also wrong. And how were they going to adapt their recommendation? Because remember, the recommendation works if your forecast was right. And your entire forecast, nobody predicted COVID, entire forecast were wrong. So you're going to use, in this class, you'll end up using analytics. It's completely a class. You're going to use Excel all the time. You'll be working with company executives there. Some other classes, MIS uses modern programming. This class, the 378 class, is actually a class which takes Excel and lets you program in Excel. So there is a tool in Excel called VBA. It's a good way to start learning what we call scripting tools and how to automate Excel. So this is the class that does that. The database management class basically gives you a good grounding on structured query language, and you learn how to fetch data, format it using code. So these are all some classes that you can use to do that. And then of course, anybody, if a group of you are really interested in a particular area, we could always look at special studies, right? From the School of Business lab point of view, there's Tableau, there is R, there are studios there, and Python, Apache is installed for you guys to start working on it if that's something you're interested in. So software and skills, where do you start to kind of learn analytics? And I would say if you're a business major, start with Excel. I mean, you're going to learn more things than Excel as you go on and get deeper into the field, but I think your basic, to get a feel for the data, start with Excel. Learn Excel really well. Learn how to do macros, if you can do nested if functions, right? If you're already a computer science major or a math major, you already have Python in your classes, so you will have some programming experience, right? But if you're a business major, you want to build your skills in your domain, your functional area, and really pick up Excel. When you graduate, you guys should be able to do pretty much a lot of what you learn in your area, whether it's HR, whether it's supply chain, whether it's finance. You need to know Excel like the back of your hand, right? You can start dabbling around with Tableau, right? Tableau is a good place to start to create digital dashboards, data visualization. You can do, you can, but before you get to Tableau, right? Figure out, can you do all the graphs in Excel? Can you create a histogram in Excel? Can you create a box and whisker plot to actually look at your data? And not only can you create it, can you understand what that says? Can you explain that to somebody else on what that says, right? So that's going to be an important part. And finally, we have R Studio installed. But for you to be able to use R or R Studio, you need to understand stats, right? You need to understand what it's doing. So you've got to have taken Business 305 and actually enjoyed doing that material, right? So I would say for the business majors, if you're here, you get to this point, or if you're able to dabble in R a little bit, that's a really good start. I mean, your learning will continue on as you go work. You'll do more stuff. You'll learn more things, but not mastering Excel before you graduate. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're in analytics or not. You're going to use Excel, and better you know Excel really well, because you can do the same task if you know it well in 30 minutes, or you can take 4 hours to do it. And so your productivity will be really a lot better at work if you know Excel well. And those of you who are interested in programming can look at Python. And if you are a math or CS major, that's not going to be a problem. You're going to already be doing much of this. So I want to finish off with, it's a tool, and you can use it in any discipline. It's all across different disciplines major, because you're analyzing data, right? And if you're going to analyze data, you can do it anywhere, right? And I'll stop there, and hopefully I haven't taken too much of your time.
That was excellent, Dr. Hari. We can now open up the floor for a few
Jacob, I don't think
questions
I
if
can
anyone
hear you.
has any.
Actually, Dr. Hari, thank you so much. But I would like to get a picture of everybody before we part company.
Scott, can
So
you
if you
hear
can
everybody?
turn
Is
on
there a
your
problem on my
cameras,
side?
get your cameras turned on, and hopefully we'll get you to smile,
there's a
because you're having a
problem
good
on my
time, and we're learning lots, and we're getting a lot of good exposure, and we're getting good
Let me
insights.
switch over.
And I know we lost a few people already, and I should have done this probably when we had 5 or 10 more on screen.
So I've my headset kind of stopped working.
Okay, we're going to get a picture,
What's that?
and I'm going to count it off in a 5, 4, smile, 3, 2, 1. Take it away. Picture taken. Make sure it's recorded. We're good to go. Thank you very much. Well done. Okay. Yeah, you got most people smiling. That's good. All right, Jacob, back to you. Thank you.
Dr. Scott. Just would like to go ahead and open up the floor for questions for Dr. Hari after his presentation. I know I have a couple, but I'll let everyone else go first. Okay. So you mentioned, Dr. Hari, obviously you're the Dean of the School of Business, so that is what you know. But I know there's a lot of people that are joining us from the math department or from CS, and they might, I know I was in this position a couple months ago. I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but I knew I liked math. So are there what majors or minors do you think that these people, or myself even, could pick up to take their math degree and more easily transition into the workforce?
Sure. So first of all, math degree is an excellent degree. I mean, strong foundation in math will carry you far. And pretty much when I look at my career, you know, I was a mechanical engineer. My MBA is in finance. I have a master's of computer science, and my PhD is in IT and operations. It's all math. It doesn't matter, you know, it's just the same math which we did across. But if you're really interested in quantitative heavy majors in business, or even minors, finance, supply chain, accounting, economics, these are all strong majors which can use the math skills. Students with strong math skills who want to analyze data, work with data, will do very well in. It doesn't mean that you cannot use marketing or HR. So for example, marketing research, which is a lot of analytics there, tends to use a lot of data analysis. But it's when you take multiple classes, right, and you look at all these classes which actually require a lot of data analysis, the majors I talked about, econ, finance, accounting, and supply chain, will be using them to a large extent, and you'll go through the entire gamut, especially finance and supply chain do a good bit of optimization also in your classes. So you'll end up doing linear programming. You'll be doing some simulation. So and econ too. I think econ students use a lot of stata there. So it's not that the other majors don't use data analysis, but these are more data analysis focused majors, and so math students would enjoy that if especially you like math.
I guess I should ask the converse of that next. Do you think business majors could benefit from perhaps picking up a math minor? And I know I don't believe it is currently on the books, but the math department is working on in the next couple of years adding a stats minor.
Yeah, that's already it's going to be in the book starting fall. Absolutely. So, and I guess it's really a question on what the students are interested in, and also you have to have a certain foundation in math, right, for you to do the so usually when let's say I'm advising a student, I would say, well, you took math 111 because most students do it, right, and then math 134. Did you like it, right? And the question is, if they liked it, yes, I would definitely encourage them to do it. If that was kind of a difficult topic for them, then maybe that would not be the ideal route for them, right? But let's say you already came in with AP Calc and you're doing Math 201 and 202, you're going to be fine, right? So it's all a question of people's skill sets and a basic level of a foundation in math. So the business majors we talked about, so long as you, and I even use that question when I'm advising students on their business majors. Let's look at Math 134, right? And what did you think about it, right? And if a student says, oh my God, that was so hard, it was difficult, then maybe supply chain, finance, may not be the right choices for you if you really struggle with math, right? If you struggle and you're willing to put in the work on it, that's great, right? But as a choice of a major, if you don't want to do math, then and I'm not talking about proofs and lemmas or even calculus, but just probability and statistics, kind of just dealing with numbers and problem solving with numbers, then you want to shift to majors which don't use that much math. And so yes, business majors can definitely benefit from more math, taking a math minor, double majoring in math. I think it's a strong foundation when they go outside. I would recommend math to anybody who I thought could do the work.
Thank you. If anyone else has any questions for either Dr. Hari or Zach, now's your chance. If you were wondering anything, no question is a bad question.
So, as a double major in computer science and mathematics, what's the best route to getting into data analytics from a computer science perspective?
Zach, we want to talk about it from the industry perspective.
Yeah. So there's a couple different paths. You can go, it depends on which field you're really looking for, kind of dictates that as well. So from like a more of a manufacturing physical goods point of view, it's, certainly working from somewhat more of a focused functional group can be helpful as a good entryway. That's the way I did it. If you're looking for elsewhere, you can look at some groups that have enterprise data analytics teams. The biggest challenge with that is going to be those are mostly located at headquarters of most companies. So what you're going to find is you're going to be mostly in populous cities. So if manufacturing, you're thinking obviously going to be Detroit area. There's a lot of tech in like Atlanta where I'm at. So it depends on where you're willing to relocate to, as well as what you want to do. I would always recommend starting a little smaller below like an enterprise team, just because it gives you a good foundation to join those teams as you kind of develop your career, but you can absolutely go straight in. I would say look for like those functional analyst roles, those business analyst roles. They're a great entryway where you gives you your good feet on the ground before you just dive in. Most data science pure roles are going to require masters or PhDs. There's a few out there that won't, but you need to have a significant amount of experience in the field already. So you'll be definitely look at that like asterisk analyst role. We'll give you a good swath of resources. Really read the job descriptions, because it's the naming conventions in the analytics field is really wild. So it's a lot of digging through basically what types of jobs are out there. An internship is always a great resource. I would say those meeting groups and networking are a great inside eye to who is hiring. Those tend to be a great resource. I lived in the upstate. There was a great one in Greenville, and there's a couple here in Atlanta. And anytime people have need opportunities, those are always great places to see kind of a wide variety of people in the same industry in the same room.
And if I wanted to add, from my perspective, watching CS math majors, I think it's a trap they fall into, and it's not a bad trap. It's a honeypot, and you get caught there. Is you end up joining a software firm, which is an application developer, right? And so when you end up in that kind of a field, then sometimes you are creating user interfaces, you are creating, could be you're looking at a small ERP kind of a system. And so you're not really dealing with a bunch of data, you're just going to be working on, a software process. You're going to be mapping a business process and writing code for it, right? You're going to look into a business process and see how a company does business and write code for it. And that's not a lot of analytics done. So if you take up that traditional job after a computer science degree, and you're not going into, as Zach did, into a manufacturing company and then shifting into basically analyzing data for them, you get caught in that, and you get stuck in that, and you move up. It's not a bad field. There's plenty of money, good salary, right? And you move along in that area, and you become a project manager. You software project manager. It goes on, and that was my job 99 to long ago, right? So, but if you're really interested in analytics and you want to do that, it might not be a bad idea for you to look at companies which are finance companies, maybe financial analyst companies, who need, now remember, they have domain knowledge, but they won't have your programming skills or your math background. So, or as Zach did, a manufacturing company where they are looking for people who will then pull all this data, write code for them, but you'll have to kind of move out of the safe path of a computer science graduate, which I call a safe path, which people go through.
Yeah, and double on that, my director, who also was a math major from Emory, worked for hedge funds before working in our space.
Yeah.
So financial sector is actually a very excellent recommendation.
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Hmm?
And it may seem like a stupid one, are there states or regions where data science might be more in demand than others? Like maybe the East Coast is looking more for it, or the West Coast. I know Silicon Valley might be looking more for it, but I don't know.
So from my perspective, population centers are going to be more in line, right? We're going to be more companies and just more availability. There's also going to be more competition. I mean, right, if you look at Silicon Valley, you look at Seattle area, I mean, they're paying a ton, but there's also a lot of them, a lot of people going from into that field and moving out into those spaces. So, I mean, if you look probably up and coming areas, I mean, like Austin's a really big one. Of course, I'm in Atlanta. Atlanta's a really big one. I started though in Seneca, so that's in like really tiny town outside of Clemson. So there's, I mean, it's a balance. So if you want to look for in demand, definitely population centers, major cities. But there are spaces that you can kind of like wiggle into smaller. I mean, kind of idea starting smaller and then working your way up. But like certainly analytics, like at the kind of more data science level, happens at centralized headquarters and startups, which are always going to be in more populous areas, just because they can find the people with those skill sets to do those jobs.
Yeah, I would agree with Zach. The bigger the city, I think the more opportunities you're going to get, and there will be more companies wanting the same thing too, right? The smaller the city, then you might have one company, but again, more number of people too. So yep, it's a catch-22.
If I may interject, it's especially with COVID, there's been a lot of discussion on more work from home. That's not to say you can live in Florence, but Charlotte's a nice arena. Boston, New York, you're right, the West Coast, the major population centers, as Zach said. But just because you live in Florence doesn't mean you can't pursue opportunities in those major markets, in those larger cities. And more, instead of going after the jobs that are posted, because the odds are against you, because 85% of jobs are from networking, if you get into these groups that Zach is mentioning and Dr. Hari is discussing, you get involved, you get known, you get recognized, and through that network is where you get a foot in the door, and now you get a chance to talk to people, and you get a chance to be interviewed and start your stuff. So it's easier if you're downtown Boston. I'm a native Bostonian. It's great, but you can still get a foot in the door in from Florence, South Carolina.
And another thing to look at is growing cities which are growing fast, right? And so then you'll have opportunities, and there while people might be moving in there, not enough people, you get your foot in early there, and so you might have opportunities which are not there. And like New York and Boston, they're not going to grow. I mean, they will grow, but not like I think you'll have. I think what do we talk about? Cities in Colorado which are growing. So you can look at those specific spots which are booming to move. I would just say be flexible. Don't get locked into, especially early in your career, don't get locked into a geographical area, right? I think one of the biggest advantages I had in my career was I went where the job went, which meant, I was in Kuala Lumpur, I was in Singapore, I came here. And so then your opportunities are a lot more, your whole world is is a job market. So definitely recommend you guys looking and being flexible first 10, 15 years in your career.
And take advantage of the internship opportunities. As a student, you can dial a number and you're up against 3 people for a job or 5 people, where if you're applying after you graduate, it's 500 people you're up against. And having the opportunity to travel, FMU has funds. I mean, peak and real grants. I think Dr. Hari can address those. If you want to live in Atlanta, if you want to live in San Jose, I mean, it's a little high cost of living. There's funds available from Francis Marion to pay your rent and food in addition to whatever you might make as an intern. So those are resources available to you.
So internship, I want to reiterate what Zach said. Internships help, and in my undergraduate, helped me a lot figure out what I did not want to do, right? So I went into, I was a mechanical engineer. First year was in an assembly line in Suzuki plant. I figured out I did not want to be there. Second year I worked in a foundry. I said, definitely not there. Third year, I got an R&D position, and guess what? They had air conditioning. And I said, that's where I want to work. I want air conditioning. I don't want to be there in 105 degrees and sweating, and it's hot, and it's noisy. So that's why I went into R&D. It was more for air conditioning. It was very strategic, right? so it will tell you working conditions are important. You're going to spend vast part of your life at your workplace. right? And so you should have a feel for it before you get into those jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So from my experience working in quality, I thought in my head, it was, things are breaking and you're investigating why and doing a lot of testing and analysis. And really that is a tiny part of that job. It is mostly paperwork and validating like what your tolerances are. And then you spend maybe 1 day a month working on something very interesting. And I thought, well, I would like to spend more days working on things interesting because for me in analytics, I spend every day solving a different problem. And that's the way I love to work. I have to do monthly reporting, and is the 3 days, the worst 3 days of my month that I have to master reporting and get it all knocked out. Because I mean, that's just not the way I like to live my life. I like to try figure out new things, put the puzzle together. And so that's where finding the industry that let me do that was the right fit for me.
All right, any more questions? Well, let's wrap this up. Thanks again for Mr. Zach Wilson and Dr. Hari for coming and speaking tonight. It's time for our giveaway. We happen to have a Wheel of Fortune
Yes, we
full of our names. And for those who have been, before we get into that, I'm sorry, we got 2 more survey questions, and they pertain to the Accounting and Finance Club. And if you're interested in being more, we're going to have the second Thursday of the month, we're going to have a special meeting like this happy hour, but also every Wednesday on the same Zoom link, we have our executive meetings. And if you're interested in them, please answer the survey or please type it out in the chat.
I actually highly recommend all of the computer science and math people to consider joining the Accounting and Finance Club. I started out as a math major and I'm now a math and finance double major. Finding ways to apply math that we learn in the classroom has become my new passion in college.
And some of us, it takes a while to figure out afterwards.
And the Wednesdays are not just for executive board, they're for anybody that wants to get more participation. And some of those soft skills, Zach is talking about some of those communication and interpersonal skills. You're going to get those by getting involved. So the key is taking advantage of those while you're in school. Most of you are probably working, most of you are in classes, most of you have studies, and free time may be at a premium. But I'll tell you, what I used to call soft skills, I now call success skills. And these are the skills you really want to carry with you and develop. So please, you're encouraged to get involved. I'm going to go ahead and end the polling in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll get to share the results. And I see the majority are yes and are coming this Wednesday at 6. Love to have you. And even if you can make it every other Wednesday, this is the same Dr. Scott CPA link on Zoom to come to. Not right now, in the future is a good answer. Like the happy hour, and nope, not coming back to anything more. But we have one more question. Maybe it'll get you to come back. So I'll let James introduce that one as well.
And go ahead and pull the other question up. I seem to have forgotten what that is. Future programs.
There we go. And you can do multiple answers here. You don't have to, not limited to one. So other programs you might like to see, from resumes, interviewing, LinkedIn, networking, career general, community alumni panels, job fairs. Feedback is encouraged, welcome, and this is your club. The students run it. The students recruit the speakers. They get to network. One of our previous meetings, a financial accounting student, first year, talked to a partner at a CPA firm that was on a panel that was recruited by a student. A week later, he was interviewing with the firm, and a week later, he had an internship. This was in his first financial accounting course. He did not have any advanced skills or advanced knowledge, but he took the initiative. So this is the place to take advantage of that. I'm going to end the polling in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and share the results. And it looks like a pretty good distribution with networking. Actually, I like that. Networking being the key. A lot of people want to make sure they can network because you're right. That's how jobs are found. 85% of jobs are attained through networking. Half of the folks that have internships will get their jobs from their internships.
And I'd like to add that this is a quote which I've started adopting is don't let perfection get in the way of getting things done. So a lot of times people have this fear of failure. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, that's okay, right? And so it's okay for you to fail, but at least you tried and you try again. So don't wait until you have the perfect opportunity. Come in, attempt to do something, and it doesn't work out, it's okay. God knows I've failed a lot, on my way here.
If you want to have that conversation, I've got plenty of failures to jump in with too. I learned more from my failures than my successes.
Absolutely.
And it's really powerful as a learning experience and process. And if you're going to trip and fall while you're in school is the time to do it. Because once you graduate, you're getting fired. School's not going to fire you. I hope not, at least.
No.
But you get the idea. Take advantage of tripping and falling now. And falling up is the way to go. That's the direction. So thank you for sharing. And back to you, James.
Okay, so like I said, let us thank y'all for coming here tonight by playing the Wheel of Fortune. We got all of y'all's names on a spinning wheel, and there are 3 Amazon gift cards we're going to give away, and it was 2 books, correct, Dr. Scott?
Yeah, I think 2 books on
2
tap.
books of Dr. Scott's a book, A Complete Guide to Succeeding with LinkedIn. A nice little paperback copy. And so I guess for the let's give away a book first. How about that? Let's give away the books first. So Jacob, when you're ready, spin the wheel.
There are a blank space or 2 as the wheel had some difficulties. So if it lands on that, we'll have to remove those. But congratulations, James.
Jacob might want to roll that one again, please. Maybe take my name off.
Okay, sounds good. We'll roll that one again. Okay, the wheels seems to have some difficulty at the moment.
Oh my.
Technology strikes again.
Is it really gonna? Okay.
No, it's not. There we go. Miss Brooke Ward, you are the winner of Dr. Scott's A Complete Guide to Succeeding with LinkedIn.
And that will be available in the School of Business office. I will drop that off with Rebecca on Monday. So it'll be there and waiting for you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's mix it up with the second book. Oh no, let's go with the second book.
Remove these names. We'll spin mine again.
Okay, so we'll remove yours.
There we go.
All right, Miss Jacqueline Wilson.
Congratulations. Both of those will be in the office.
Okay, now it's time for our $10 Amazon gift card. So for our very first one, who will be the lucky winner? Janaya. We will send you an email also. Are you there?
Thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations.
All right, for the second one. All right, Vincent Roberts.
Thank you.
All right, for the final one. Hey, $10 is $10. Up, 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 up. Tyler Shirtliff.
Thank you. My wife's gonna love it.
Those are good questions too. You earned it.
Should be all of our spinning.
That's it. You can go ahead and get out of there, Jacob.
Let's see. I believe it's stop share.
And like I said, all those that have won prizes, we will send you an email with instructions on how to claim your winnings. For those interested in the AFC, the President's Bowl, and or the Idea Challenge, we will also email our contact and meeting information regarding to that. Also, please consider getting involved in this. And once again, big thanks to Dr. Hari, big thanks to Mr. Wilson from me for their valuable business acumen. And we hope to see y'all again real soon. Any other things from Jacob or Dr. Scott?
Real quick, do we have the emails of everyone who won a prize today? If you could drop that in the chat, just it'll make it easier to contact you.
Although if you got the email announcement for this meeting, we do have the email. If you didn't get an email announcement, you're probably not here. So that's, but we'll track you down, but it'd be a good idea to put it in the chat. Also, I would encourage you to go ahead and connect on LinkedIn with those. Anybody put a LinkedIn address in the chat, and even download the chat. If you hit the chat button and you see those three dots in the lower right-hand corner and save chat, you can save the chat to your local PC or Mac and have access to those. And with that chat, you'll be able to click on and access anybody else that has LinkedIn and is on track. So, and I personally would like to thank Dr. Hari and Zach for both sharing their insights, their time. Jacob and James, very well done, well coordinated. Thank you for recruiting the folks to speak. I think your classmates or your, what I call your future fellow alumni, appreciate your efforts. I know I do. And I wanted to say thank to both of you for the initiative you have taken and continue to take. Looking forward to other involvements as well.
Thank you. Thank everyone else for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Be well.
guys.
Great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Have a good
A couple
night.
of us will hang on afterwards if anybody really wants to chat and didn't want to talk to the whole group or has any other questions about Idea Challenge, about data analytics. We'll hang out here as long as you want to talk. I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for everybody.
And I'll wait, no problem.
Cool. Any general feedback that anybody has? Anything, anybody that wants to say good, bad, or ugly? Actually, those are two negatives and a positive. I really want to change that to, a few more positives, but the good, the excellent, the bad, the ugly.
You got to make the positive sandwich, right? The good thing and the good things on the end, the bad thing in the middle.
There you go.
Oh, it was great. It was really well done. And James and Jacob, really well organized. And Scott, I think it's a great initiative that you're getting these students together and doing these things. That's excellent.
Well,
I mean,
they're doing the work.
Yeah, this is part of networking, right? They get to meet each other and talk to each other, and that's one of the things which we're seeing with online courses is lacking.
Facilitation.
At the master's level is the networking, and students are feeling that. So normally, when you're in class, then Jacob, you meet James, you're both in the same class, you talk to each other, you say, let's study together, right? All those connections are not formed in the online setting. And so what's happening is each person is isolated, studying on their own. And so what we're seeing is a drop in performance, not because they are not capable, but because they lose that connection. And
It's
so
an engagement.
yeah,
Lack
and
of
so
engagement.
you have to force that engagement in a kind of structure that engagement in the online class where it's just natural when you're all sitting together.
Yeah, we even see that in industry, right? So it's interesting to see different departments of how they've adapted to, because we've been basically full-time remote since last March. And then we came back in for about a week and a half in like rotating shifts, and about a third of the office got COVID. So we quickly have just abandoned very quickly that process. And so it's been interesting. Like our team, our analytics team, we basically have daily calls like daily catch-ups in the morning and a longer one at the beginning of the week to start kind of our normal weekly sprint. But like some groups basically catch up every 2 weeks or once a month. And our work forces us to be this way, but it's surprising to see that some
Yeah.
groups really haven't adopted
Yeah.
anything virtual.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you know, I was as I was just watching this whole year, I think virtual, there's definitely efficiencies, but we lose in effectiveness. That is because we don't have the social connection and the culture to be formed, you know, all those things which are so important where you get that when you're together in a face-to-face setting. But yeah, from a delivery perspective, just content delivery perspective, it's very efficient.
We have definitely in our organization of events noticed a drop in attendance. Part of that is it's when the club started, our attendance was so high. We had, I don't remember, Dr. Scott has the statistic of our first meeting that was 64 people.
Yeah, it was over 60 folks that were first, and now it was half today. It was 27, I think, was our peak. About half.
Yeah,
that.
that's tough. You get that initial build up. That's it's new, and then you kind of have that slump, and then hopefully stabilization, and then growth following.
Yeah, and Scott, you know, hopefully by fall, the 222A class will be set up in a way that you can have face-to-face and distance. So if you're doing the club meeting there, people can join in through Zoom, or they can join and, you know, they can be there face-to-face, and that might help, you know, kind of address some of the issues where students are saying, I've got to work, and so I can't come, and, you know, and then the people who really want to be face-to-face. Hopefully we'll get that done. We'll be working on the technology there.
There's been a lot. I do a lot of Zoom meetings and participate. I mean, every day I feel like I'm behind the screen, and there's no such thing as bad Zoom meetings if you have engagement.
Sure.
You can have a 2-hour meeting that's exciting, interesting, and powerful. That's great. You can have a 15-minute meeting that's boring and unproductive, not engaged.
See a wall of red microphones.
Yeah. It really is keeping it interesting, keeping the engagement, keeping the participation, whether it's chat, surveys, breakouts, whatever it takes, and get folks that they're involved.
Yeah,
and that's powerful.
Yeah, I usually do it by this.
A Balrog always gets people excited.
If I don't see an engagement, then there's a fire behind me. And some students get the context also. You know, you shall
not pass.
Which is very cool. Well done, team.
All right, yeah, good job, a really good job.
And thank you for inviting me. I'm more than happy. If you do it again in analytics, I'll gladly put something else together.
Oh, we'll have you back for more. Don't you worry.
Excellent.
We've got your LinkedIn address. We know how to find you.
Notified me. I'm easily found.
Good. Next time you're back in town in the area, by all means, please stop on by.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
We'll take you out to there's some good places now.
Excellent. It was thin pickings back in back in the late 2010s.
Yeah, the Florence has definitely changed a lot, in the 14 years now. I mean, downtown is, well, before the pandemic hit was good.
They'd started the downtown revitalization, but it was at the very beginning of it when I was there.
Yeah.
Actually, speak from as a student perspective, someone approached me at the gym about their own restaurant that they had just opened, specifically targeting students to come study, work, eat. So the new business in Florence, I think they opened a week or two ago.
Is she the person over from the airport that had the restaurant at the airport, or is that somebody else?
I do not believe it's the person by the airport. They're actually right by FMU's medical building.
Oh, okay.
That is in downtown.
Health science.
I have not yet been there to her establishment.
Yeah, that's a really good building.
Cool.
All right. Well, Scott, I'm going to head out. Thank you all for inviting me. Zach, I'll be in touch with you definitely. And all of you, Jacob, James, all of you did a great job. I'm really impressed at what you guys are doing here.
Kudos. Yep, well done.
Thanks for coming.
And if any of you are interested in what you need to do in analytics just come by and talk to me, and I'll be happy to help you guys out with that.
Excellent. All right, there's still some folks hanging on. I don't know if I don't know if Will is still alive. Haven't heard much, or did he turn it off yet? Anyways, so well done, on track, and I will look forward to continued communication, Zach. And
Yep,
we
absolutely.
got our meeting next Wednesday. Hopefully, we'll be able to make it. Maybe he won't turn it off, and he'll stay on until next Wednesday, and that'll work too. But I'll catch him in class tomorrow. Anything else that anybody has that wants to say? Or I think it went real well. I think it was engaging, interesting, and well received, and that's all we can ask for.
I think it was one of our better virtual events, and I'm excited about the networking event because there seemed to be a lot of desire for it.
Oh, the interest in networking. It sounds like that's our next. I mean, what we're discussing was it healthcare versus networking versus some other things for next meeting. We got some stuff to talk about on Wednesday.
Okay, yeah.
By the way, Zach, our backup plan for tonight was a networking meeting, breakout groups, and that was a backup plan. Had we not, data analytics fell through, so we had a backup, which is good.
It's always important. Oh yeah, having a plan B is always beneficial.
But thanks to you, we didn't need our plan B. So thank you for your
Perfect.
participation.
Excellent participation.
Outstanding. Yeah. Well done.
Thanks,
All right.
All right.
You guys have a good night, and we will see you sooner than later.
All righty now.
You too. Have a good night.
Well done, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.